I'm going to share a little bit about myself. I'm going to share a little bit about my experience. I want to share what I've learned throughout my life in this link between kind of the rise of technology, my rise of me as a teenager, adult, where I am now. I hope you like it. So predominantly what I want you to think about is this idea of technology. Does it bring freedom or does it constrain us? And the idea is, what is that technology and social media tells us about our identity? Does it shape our identity? I want you to think, how is it that technology, social media, shapes the identity that we have as human beings? But first, I want you to think about this. Imagine this. Imagine suddenly you send an actual message, and what you see on your screen, on your phone, is very simply two blue ticks, right? Two blue ticks. 1 hour goes by, nothing. Another hour goes by, nothing. Right? I think some of you, and I can see some of you guys at the back, you know what I'm talking about, right? Sometimes when we see those two blue ticks and we don't see a reply, suddenly we panic. Perhaps we're questioning, did I say something wrong? Are we still okay? That suspense of not being able to know immediately what the other person is thinking once we send a message sometimes brings feelings, emotions, and questions at the identity, but also the relationship we have with others. So from these, I hope to kind of try to question this idea that perhaps we're giving technology, social media, too much power to determine what our identity is. And this is what I want to invite you to reflect on, right? How is technology, how is social media influencing our identity? And to what extent should we allow that influence to shape who we are, to shape our identity? But I guess one of the first things that we need to think about is, let me tell you about me, okay? I was born in the 90s. All right, guys. I know some of you might think, like, especially the young ones in the room, they're say, "Whoa, that sounds like really old." Believe me, it's not that old. Okay, you'll see when you get to my age, you'll realize. But what I want you to think is, I grew up with a Nokia phone. For those who don't know what a Nokia phone is, right, it's this solid piece of technology that you could easily drop it from probably the top floor of Trinity, drop down, make a hole in the concrete, you'll be able to pick it up and it's still going to be work just fine, right? Can you do that with an iPhone now? I don't know. I don't think so, right? So this is the technology I raised with. Mobile phone, very simple, awesome. Battery life, minimum 3 days, right? 3 days minimum battery life. This is what I had as growing up. Text messages. I bet if I challenge some of you young ones to send a text message in one of these, you're going to stay there for a long time. So communication was slightly different. The way we communicated changed. And one of the things that I want you to think about is that then, as I grew older, then social media started developing. Right? We started talking about communication in terms of the internet, right? So first of all, it was in the computer, MSN, and you used to have to be online, sat on the computer, waiting for somebody else to log in. Then we started this idea of other social media that you guys are familiar with, right? So we had texting for us used to cost us money, okay? In my age, when you wanted to communicate with a friend, what you would do is very simply, if you're going to send a text message, that would be like 10 cents, right? If you were privileged enough to get a contract, then you might have maybe 250 messages, all right, 250 minutes, and that was a lot, right? That was a lot, okay? So communication actually was slightly different. When you used to, before, you used to call your friends on the phone, right? And an actual physical phone, as you can see here. You rang, ring, ring, ring. If nobody picked up, okay, cool. I'll talk later. I'll try again maybe later or tomorrow. No big deal. You used to be able to go and knock at people's door and say, hey, where are you? How's it going? Can we go out and play? But then things change. 2004, Facebook started getting popularity, 2007. Then the creation of the iPhone and all the smart devices started becoming more and more popular, which means that the communication right, exchange grew more and more and more. Okay? Grew more and more and more, which was something that is quite different to what it was before. So communication started to increase in terms of speed. Okay, let me just do this, guys, a little bit. In terms of speed, immediacy, how immediate communication took place. Before, we used to send letters back in the old times. And if you go even back, they used to go and travel through horses, right? And it used to take days, months to get a letter. Then we started communicating through telephones, wire, fax, the internet, through messages. Smart devices such as this facilitated the communication a lot more. How fast, the immediacy, how fast you communicate with each other. And you need to realize that actually this is a huge change in history, because over time, communication has been an organic process that takes time to communicate, to send a letter, to get a message. But technology made this much easier, much faster, costs decrease. Then we had this idea of sharing our lives, sharing what we do. When Instagram opened up and people started sharing what they do every day, taking a picture, right? That was change everything. But these changes also led to other things that is something that I want to speak about, right? Which is identity. What is identity? And I started thinking and saying, okay, as I'm growing older, right? And when I was a teenager, one of the things that I question a lot is, who am I? Who am I becoming? Am I just somebody that I want to be? Am I happy? What do I want to be when I'm older? Do I want to go to university? What do I want to do? What is my identity? Who am I? And in this aspect, this identity, when we look at it, you can ask yourself from a couple of perspectives, right? The first perspective that I want to kind of talk about is this idea of philosophically. So philosophically, you can ask, what is identity conform of? Is it experiences? Is it the person that you are today? And if so, tomorrow, how have you changed? Okay. So over time, how is your identity formed? Do experiences change? Do the way you look change your identity? Okay. So philosophically, we question these things. Psychologically, is who am I now? Who do I want to be internally? And how can I change those things that I might want to change or obtain? Sociologically, on the other hand, is this notion of, okay, my interactions with society tells me who I am, tells me about my identity. Am I a teacher? Am I a good person because I haven't broken any laws, right? Am I accepted by society? Does that form my identity? So when we ask these two aspects of these three approaches, I started to realize that identity is something that is changed in recent years with technology. In the past, when you form identity over a long period of time, human history, think about it years back, identity was normally determined by your father, your mother, telling you, you are a good son, you are a good daughter, you are this, you. And we developed this idea of sacrificing who we are as individuals for the benefit of the family. Okay. So this idea was very, very important in the past. The identity was formed as a cohesion of, as a family, as a members of a society, who are we together? But recent in technology, with the development of communication and so on, this has changed. Now we are approaching to a notion of individualistic. Who do you want to be? And it's not about sacrificing for the greater good. It's about, I don't have to sacrifice anything, but I need to focus on who I want to be to achieve what I want to achieve. And this is something that hasn't worked for a very long time in human civilization. It's never been like this. We've always cooperated, right? And this is what I want you to think. Does technology and the speed in which we can communicate and the speed that is moving, is it leading us for our identity to change? And is that change a good change? Right? This is one of the things that I want to kind of think about. Now, technology is amazing. I love technology. I love everything to do with technology. Right? I remember when I was probably 12, 13, 14, and they talked about plastic technology, things that you can fold, right? Screens that you could fold. For me, that was mind blowing. And I couldn't wait until that technology was accessible to me. Now we have foldable phones. We have virtual reality, which, believe me or not, is pretty awesome, right? If you play a virtual game, it's amazing. I love it. Right? The experience that you get is like you're inside the game. But technology also creates what I like to call is also a hyper reality. When we have social media, when we have technology grow so much, it starts creating a reality that perhaps is not really there. Early 2010s, bloggers became very popular, YouTubers, what you call them. And they used to present an image of their lives in which they focus and show you their amazing things that they used to do, their amazing trips, their amazing food, the amazing cars that they have. This still happens today. This hyper reality that is inflated, that when it comes to reality is not necessarily true, that these individuals live like this. But then this creates some pressure, right? It creates some pressure into teenagers, especially the guys some of these guys are at, into believing that their reality must be like you see online. And that is incredibly dangerous. Why? Because if I grow up thinking that this hyper reality, right, this idea of is real, that person is real, that in order for you to achieve these goals, you need to buy the latest, I don't know, gadget, this makeup, this bag. But suddenly you obtain those goods, suddenly you obtain that makeup, that phone, and it doesn't really change. It doesn't really deliver that was promised. So for me, it's this idea of editing that reality provides this idea of hyper or a false notion of what reality is. And this becomes incredibly dangerous, especially for teenagers, the age that you guys are at, because you are exposed to all of this social media. You are exposed to things like follows, views, with the expectation that all of this will provide you a level of satisfaction that sometimes does not get delivered when you obtain it. And that brings to a clash in reality. And it's especially important because at the age that you're at, you might strive towards being that. But then it becomes limited. Then it becomes this idea of, if I spend my teenage years saying, I'm going to be a blogger, small percentage of bloggers make it to the very top. But suddenly you've made such a big sacrifice, and maybe you get there and you find out, actually, it's not really all luxury. I have to do a lot of work behind that. I might have to do things that you haven't even been exposed to. So from here, this hyper reality is something that I'm very concerned about, because he offers a false reality. He offers something that is not really there, and it promises something that sometimes cannot be delivered. Similarly, we also have this idea of the urgency of immediacy of communication. Social media all the time is asking you, post, communicate, send a message, post another picture, get likes, this video, latest trend, latest TikTok. Have we done it? Latest game. Are you playing it? But one of the things that it doesn't allow is this notion that we normally required to build things. We're human beings. We grow. Growing takes time. Learning takes time. Building a good relationship takes time. It's not immediate. The new generation have access to on-demand TV. You know, when I was young, my favorite thing when I was a child used to be at 1 o'clock, I used to go to the TV to watch Dragon Ball Z. Okay? We used to be playing. Everybody would be playing. 1 o'clock hit, everybody stopped playing. We went to the houses. We used to turn on the TV and we used to watch the TV program. All right. Why? Because that was the only time that you could see it. After they finished, we used to go back and we used to talk about it. Did you watch the latest episode? This happened. Could you believe that this happened? And we used to interact. And we used to say, we have to wait. We couldn't just turn on the computer, episode 1, 2, 3, 4, and binge watch. That's something new, right? So this immediacy of content, of technology, also take something beautiful away, which I'm going to develop further. The notion of waiting. Waiting is something beautiful that we are forgetting in the new generation. To wait, to allow things to grow organically. Okay? So when we talk about this and always having to send messages, always having to reply, sometimes it's better to wait. I personally am terrible at replying a text. I absolutely dislike texting. I'm not very good at it. I prefer to make a phone call. This is the way I am. I know that other people, on the other hand, prefer texting, right? I find it easier. Sometimes my brother used to get annoyed with me because he used to, listen, I sent you a message, you didn't reply. Is it because you don't love me? I'm like, dude, chill. Like, bro, we're brothers. Of course I love you. Just because I don't reply doesn't mean that I don't love you. I just sometimes need to take my time to think of what I want to pay this. Sometimes we reply immediately, but it's not really who we are. Because maybe the person that who we are requires a bit of time to be able to reply properly. And technology puts this pressure on social media to always reply immediately. Now, true identity. How do we root a true identity? And in here, I'm going to share with you, when I was growing to be a teenager, I wanted to root my identity. And the question here is very simple, right? How do we root a true identity that will flourish, that will get me to be who I want to be in the future? Now, for many of us, right, we can choose many things. But in a generation where technology is growing, immediacy is fast, content, we spending less time together, less time thinking, less time being alone and bored. I want to share a couple of things that I did when growing up. I grew up with technology. In other words, I grew up with computers, the internet. Now we're in the process of AI. And identity is something that doesn't stay static. Identity is something that is organic. It changes all the time. And the question here is, how do I build an identity that is strong? An identity that will lead me to success, that will lead me to achieve what I want to be. And I'm going to share with you what I think this is, right? First of all, for me, what roots me personally are my Christian values. And what I find very interesting within this is that it goes against certain values of what society suggests that you should be identifying or creating your identity with, which is the notion that I am whatever society says I am. That is wrong. You're not what society tells you are. Right? If society tells you, oh, you're a bad person, does that mean that you're bad? No. If society tells you, oh, you're not intelligent or you don't have the latest gadgets, that means you're not popular. No. Your identity is not based in these trivial things. Second is the idea that you are whatever you want to be. Yes and no. We have a potential to achieve our goals, to achieve things. But ultimately, for me, in the process of identifying what my identity was, is to understand that actually, I believe that I am the son of God. God loves me, cares for me, right? And in that aspect, I've been given, through Christ, I've been given this idea of you are not alone. You are also can be part of something greater that God has got planned for you. So in that sense, my identity goes beyond just simply what society says, what I think of myself, but is rooted of what a higher power says that I am. Right? So I build my identity across these moral values. So how? Right? Is created through wisdom, discipline, relationships, choices, love, and action. So when you're thinking about you're building your identity, remember, identity is not what society tells you, it's not how you feel right now about yourself, but is something that was given to you by the God and the Creator that is waiting for you to achieve it through this idea of wisdom, discipline, relationships, action. And sometimes to be able to take action, you need to pause. You need to wait and see, what is social media doing to us? Is it helping me to be the person I want to be? Or is it forcing me to communicate more quickly and not show an authentic aspect of who I am as a person. So all I want you to invite is this. Social media technology is amazing, but if it's used properly. One of the things that I don't want you to remember as well is that algorithms determine what content you see, what content they're pushed, and that content that you watch influences your identity. But remember, your identity is not determined by who society says I am, who do I feel I am today, but much rather by a greater power that tells you who you are. And only through discipline, through moral values, through searching and action, is that you are able to find an identity that builds a better person of who you are. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.